Okay, guys, so welcome to another interview today. Today, I'm talking to the one and only Chad Mendes, obviously former UFC featherweight title contender, and had a storied career across the entire featherweight division and kind of fought a who's who of the featherweight division for the last generation. So, my first question, man, is like, how you doing? Like, how's things?
Things are good, man. It's been a little over 2 years now since retiring from the UFC, and I've launched three new companies since then, and just been trying to make a bunch of money, not getting punched in the face, and being a dad, a husband, and just being out here, trying to live my dream. So things have been good, man.
How was the pandemic for you as well? Like, was that quite rough on you, or?
No, it wasn't too bad. I mean, my my business one that I launched right out of fighting was Fins and Feathers, which is like we call it a celebrity outdoor service. So we basically just take people all around the world on different hunting and fishing trips, either teach them their first time ever doing it, or people that have done it their whole lives and just want to check out some new stuff. So luckily for me, when everything got shut down, people wanted to get outside. People wanted to go do fishing, do hunting trips, and so luckily for us, it didn't. It actually, I think, helped. But yeah, no, it was definitely interesting being stuck inside. We were definitely pretty adamant about being safe there for about a month, maybe 2 months, and then after that, we just actually my wife ended up getting it, and a big group of us got it from a Fourth of July event, and basically like a cold or a flu, and then everybody was fine. So after that, we all kind of just went back to living normal, other than having to wear masks and stuff here and there. But yeah, I've been traveling a ton and just doing my thing.
I'm glad to hear it, man, because like I've spoken to a few fighters and they said that like the pandemic's been rough on them, especially with like because they've been like actively training and stuff like that, and like that's been greatly affected. But I'm glad to hear that especially business wise, the pandemic kind of came through for you as well. Um, so let's go back to the beginning. Maybe there's some people out there that's listening to this right now that don't know like kind of like the history of your career. So let's go back to the beginning. So like, how did you get started into mixed martial arts and then ended up in the like the WEC and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I actually started wrestling when I was 5 years old, and my dad got me into it. He wrestled up through high school and coached me from 5 years old all the way up until high school. Um, and then basically I wrestled every single year, freestyle, Greco, until I got in the collegiate. Then I would do collegiate, freestyle, and Greco. So it was basically year-round wrestling. And then got a scholarship to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, wrestled there, and that's where I met Uriah Faber, doing wrestling camps and stuff over the summer. And I remember my wrestling coach at Cal Poly would put on like a 5 or 6 week long wrestling camp during the summer up in Tahoe. And he brought Faber in as a instructor, as long as, same with me and a bunch of my teammates. So we were teaching kids different techniques and stuff throughout the whole 5 weeks. And he was training for a fight that he had coming up, I think in like 4 or 5 weeks. And he kept wrestling and grappling with a lot of the other wrestlers and kept hurting them because, he's rolling submissions and he's just a physical dude. And I had no clue what submission grappling was or jiu-jitsu or anything like that. And he's like, man, I don't have any training partners. Nobody wants to train. I'm going to have to go home because I need to train for this fight if no one's going to work out with me. So I was like, I mean, I'll do it. I don't know what I'm doing. So I sat there and grappled with them and rolled with them for a few hours. And I mean, I got my ass kicked, obviously, but he's like, dude, I think you'll be really good at this. Go ahead and finish your college career if you want. You can stay with me. I have an extra room at my house. Come up and train with me and fight at Team Alpha Male. So finished up my college career. Day after I graduated, threw all my stuff in the U-Haul and moved up to Sacramento, moved into his spare room in his house, and started basically training right away, I think the next day. So I trained for about 3 months and then jumped right into my first pro fight. I ended up submitting the guy in the first round, and just remember thinking, holy shit, this is awesome, man. I could definitely get used to this. So I think I fought 5 times for that organization. And I think that fifth fight, I'm pretty sure it was 5. Yeah. The fifth fight, some of the WEC guys came out and were watching, and basically kind of like a scouting recruiting trip type thing. And I ended up going out there and I broke my hand like in the beginning of the second round and had to fight the rest of the fight with a broken hand. So I was basically doing the whole Uriah Faber thing, throwing elbows and hitting him with my left and doing a bunch of wrestling, ground and pound type stuff. But they're like, this guy's gonna, let's make it. We'll get him in here. So I signed with the WEC, signed a big deal with Pepsi, which was freaking awesome. And that's kind of where it all started right there. Just started snowballing into multiple big WEC fights. And then when the merge happened, we jumped into the UFC and balls to the wall there.
I was going to say, it's interesting to hear about how you weren't really doing like submission grappling. And then you get into MMA and then you go 11-0 in MMA straight off the bat. Do you know what I mean? That's brilliant to hear. And then obviously like you get into the WEC, then you get into the UFC, and then you end up fighting for the title against Jose Aldo on UFC 142, which was obviously like the first loss you ever took in MMA. So what was that like initially to kind of like take that loss? Because from what I remember about that fight, you were doing really well up to the point of when you ended up losing. So what was that like losing your first professional mixed martial arts fight? And how did you then eventually kind of like bounce back from that?
Yeah, man, it is a bummer. I mean, I don't like losing anything. I think I'd only had my senior year in college, my only loss, I think, was the NCAA final. So I can't remember what my record was, but there was a long time of no losing. So you really get used to that, And, same thing. I jumped into mixed martial arts and going undefeated until that fight was, it hurts. It definitely hurts, and I feel like I was such a baby in the sport still, jumping in there with a guy like Jose Aldo, who was a freaking animal. At the time I was like ready, but looking back on it, I was nowhere near ready. I had no striking. My striking I was still trying to figure everything out, but just, I had the wrestling, had the ground and pound and, the cardio, the conditioning to push the pace. And that's how I was beating everyone. And, got caught with a big knee and lights out. So, it definitely sucked. I was in his hometown of Brazil, which, the fans out there are freaking awesome, but you're so far from home and, you're just like ready to get back after that. So it was definitely tough. It was a hard one to swallow for sure.
I mean, to be fair, you bounced back really well. I mean, after that point, like you said, your stand-up started to really improve, and then you KO Clay Guida in like what 30 seconds or something like that.
So I remember, yeah.
That was awesome, man.
It was later in the fight. I think it was in the third, but that was a tough one, man. That's probably one of my toughest fights, mainly because me and Clay are just such good buddies. In fact, we're actually business partners now. He's doing the like fishing side of the fins and feathers. His is gills and thrills with Guida. So we take different people on cool fishing trips all over the world. We just got back from one in Florida, which was really cool. But yeah, man, it was tough getting in there and fighting a buddy for sure. That's probably my least favorite fight.
Damn, that's awesome to hear though, that you guys are getting into business together. I mean, that fight itself was amazing as well. And actually going back and rewatching that fight, because I haven't seen it since the actual fight as well. So going back and watching it for me, like in preparation for this, was a real joy for me as well. By the way, that second Jose Aldo fight. So obviously you win the Clay Guida fight, and I think there was another one in there in between. And then you fight Jose Aldo for the second time. And then, like you said, your stand-up really improved. Like you dropped, I think you were like the first person ever to drop Jose Aldo or something like that.
Something, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and but like obviously you ended up losing that by decision. So like, what do you think was like the deciding factor in that fight? Because I think that fight won like fight of the year or something like that for that particular year. And like you said, you're first person to ever drop him. Like, so what do you think was the deciding factor that eventually led to you not being able to pick up the win that second time?
I think it was an extremely close fight. I got pretty much all the takedowns as far as the wrestling goes. I feel like we were just on par with being super close with the strikes. I think what got it was he dropped me more times than I dropped him in that fight ultimately, and I hit him with so many big shots, and that dude has a chin from hell. I mean, like that uppercut came from the floor. I don't know how that guy just shook it off and just kept going, but I really think that was the deciding factor, and it was crazy leading up to that, going from that first fight. And, I think I had a 4 or 5 fight KO or TKO stretch there. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5, but I started figuring out the striking a bit better and realizing, you know, I had the power to, if I can get inside and hit people, I could put them to sleep. And that really just comes with confidence. You know, it's for me being a wrestler, bent over in my wrestling stance my whole life, going to standing up straight and like putting my fists up. It's like completely different world, you know? And it took me a bit to get the confidence to be able to stand there with someone or close the distance and get inside and actually throw the punches. But once I started getting that confidence and figuring that part of it out, you know, it was easier for me to unleash. And once that happened, that's when I went on that kind of that TKO KO streak. And it definitely boosted my confidence getting back in there against a striker like Jose Aldo. So, you know, I definitely felt a lot more confident that second fight than I did the first time, being such a baby that I was. But yeah, man, I would say the deciding factor was the, you know, time or two more that he dropped me than I dropped him.
Or I mean, like, either way, brother, it was an insane fight to watch. Like, both of them were complete wars, and they're a pleasure to watch, even in hindsight now. So moving along, like, obviously after that fight, you fight Ricardo Lamas, which was a really good fight as well. And then you had the opportunity to fight McGregor on that short notice interim fight. So what, like, obviously this was like a big opportunity to fight for like the interim belt this time. Against this guy at the time who was like a big rising star. Like, what was your kind of like mindset going into that fight and kind of the game plan moving into that fight? Because what was like, how short notice was the actual fight for you?
It was 10 days notice.
Okay.
So it was kind of a crappy situation. Like, I had just went through that war with Aldo, just I think it was a couple months before that. So I honestly wasn't training. I mean, that fight with Aldo is the most pain I've ever been in after a fight, just head to toe. Everything's beat up, like sore, strained muscles. My feet were swollen from throwing kicks. You know, my hands all hurt. So I mean, a good probably month, I wasn't doing anything, just letting my body try to heal. And then, you know, I'm slowly starting to get into it a little bit more. And then I get a call basically saying, hey, we're 10 days out. So now I got to lose 25 pounds in 10 days. Can you still hear me? It just said my internet's crappy.
It was a little bit droppy, but like we can still hear the audio, so we're all good.
Yeah. You know, 25 pounds in 10 days. And the crappy thing is I go out there in the first sparring session, we bring in one of my tall southpaw teammates, and I throw a mean inside kick and catch his knee and just break the top of my foot. I fractured it. Shit. And so for you know, it's 10-day camp. 5 days after that, I couldn't even walk. I was trying to do all swimming workouts. If you watch like the countdown to the fight, I'm in the pool doing stuff. Obviously I didn't talk about it, but you know, I had to do something to try to lose that weight and burn calories, but I could barely even stand on my foot. So, you know, on day 5, I think of that, I was taking enough ibuprofen to where I could start to bounce around on it, and I had to just get back into it. So yeah, I remember in that fight, I threw one kick and I hit that spot again, and I was like, yep, that's it. No more kicks from me. So it's crazy thinking that in the fight, but yeah. So, I mean, obviously I wasn't prepared for that. You know, it's one of those opportunities it's tough to say no to. You know, it's the chance at a UFC world title. Like, I could have went out there and caught him with one overhand right, put him to sleep. You know, it's like, you know, you got to take that risk from time to time. So I did, but it didn't go my way.
Actually, really, I didn't know about the leg injury, like during that fight. So that's a really interesting thing to look back in hindsight. Like, what if that wasn't the situation? Do you know what I mean? But like, how do you feel about that fight now in like hindsight? Because obviously, like, it didn't go your way and things like that. Like, how do you look back on that fight?
It was a huge fight for me, man. It was a huge step in my career. You know, it helped grow my social presence, which has helped me now after retiring. It's helping my businesses grow. It's helping, you know, other companies want to work with me and stuff like that. So looking back on it, yeah, it sucked I didn't get the win, but you know, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that, and that, you know, just that's how it was supposed to go. And I just try to pull the positive from it. So it sucks I lost, but there's definitely some positives from that fight.
That's great to hear, though, man. I'm glad that you're not like dwelling on that loss. Do you know what I mean? Because I can imagine a lot of people would be really hung up on that. But that's good that you can kind of take something from it.
don't get me wrong, it bums me out for sure. Like that's definitely one fight I wish I could get a redo with a full training camp, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Um, so in your last fight in your career, you fought obviously the current champ, Volkanovski, right? So like, what was that fight like for you? And then like, what was the reason why you decided to retire after you lost that fight?
I'd always said that I was going to retire around 34, 35 years old. I didn't want to be fighting into my 40s like some of these guys. For me, it was like, I've made enough money to make some good investments, so the money wasn't a necessity. Yeah, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure if somebody offered me a big chunk of money right now, I'd probably step back in there or think about it at least. I did see De La Hoya is coming out of retirement, so it'd be awesome to get in there and box a guy like that for a big payday. But outside of that, like, I really don't have any interest to do it. But it's for me, it's just I did what I wanted to do outside of being the UFC champion. I competed all the way up through college and wanted to keep competing because I wasn't done. I was still young. I wanted to make some money, having fun, traveling the world, meeting a ton of people, and growing my brand. I did that. And I had just had my first baby girl, my first child. So for me, it was like, look, do I need to stay in this? Do I need to keep doing this? Like, and when I launched Fins and Feathers, I was putting a ton of time and effort into that. And I don't know, it was almost pulling my drive away from the love of the sport for fighting. It was a new passion for me. It was something that was new, it was exciting. It was, something I wanted to grow and do, and so I think that was kind of pulling that away from what I used to feel for fighting. Not that I ever stopped loving fighting at all, but, I could tell towards the end that was what was happening. And, that's such a rough sport. That's not something you could just go and clock in and, mindlessly do something and then clock out and go home to your family. Like, you have to be on point through your entire training camp. You have to do everything right. You have to have a spot on perfect game plan to get in there and beat these guys. And if everything's not done correctly, you're not going to win. So, I basically decided leading up to that fight, that was probably going to be the last one, win or lose. And, it definitely, it sucks losing, but at least the guy ended up being a complete stud, and going out there and just whooping everybody. So I don't feel as bad, I guess. But, yeah, man, going into that fight, this was a guy I knew was going to be very tough. I mean, watching his fights, he'd fought one of my teammates. I think one thing I would do different going into that fight was his endurance. It wasn't anything that I really focused on a ton, which I think is his strongest point. His ability to just keep going nonstop. I don't think he's like the most explosive or powerful or like any one area that he's like extremely good at. He's just really well-rounded all over, and he has great endurance. So going into that, knowing that I was more explosive, faster, and I think had more power, I would definitely pace myself a bit more, be smarter on movements, and probably implement my wrestling a bit more. I felt like being able to take him down was relatively easy, and I could have focused more on that through my camp too. But yeah, I mean, the guy, like I said, the dude is a stud, and I don't see him losing that belt anytime soon. So, that's cool for him. And another thing too is he's kind of an outdoorsman and loves the barbecue and grill. So I've actually been talking to him a bit. I just launched a new line of dry rubs, like spices, and he just started a new YouTube like cooking channel. So he does a lot of barbecuing and grilling and stuff like that, which is perfect. So I'm going to send him a bunch of our rubs, and he said he's going to do an episode, like basically reviewing them and cooking with them stuff. So he's a cool dude.
Oh shit, I didn't know that Volkanovski had a cooking channel. I'm gonna have to check that out. I feel like that's gonna be an interesting one.
Hell yeah. Cooking with Volk, I think is what he calls it. It's pretty cool.
Oh shit, okay. I'll check that out after the interview. So like you said, like I mean, you're only 35 at the moment, right? If Wikipedia is correct. And which
61. Oh, I'm almost 40, bro.
But like today's standards, that's not really past that kind of like fighting age. I mean, look at Jan Blachowicz, like he's what, in his 40s and he's a champ. So
yeah.
like you said, is there any chance we could see you return? Do you know what I mean? Because you were still fighting the top guys in the world and still, putting up a fight against them. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I never doubted my ability to compete with any of the top guys, even when I retired. Like, I know I could get back in there and be fighting for the title within a fight or two. That was never the reason why I retired. It's like I said earlier, it's kind of when you start losing that complete excitement for it and that huge love and thrill for it, I think that's when it's time, whether you're 30 years old or you're 48. It's like I said, one of these really brutal sports that serious shit could happen if you don't do things right. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever come back to the UFC. No, I don't think I'll ever go to any other fight organization in the MMA world. Like I said, I would be interested if there was some big money fights, say like boxing or I don't know. I don't know if grappling would ever be big enough to pay big enough, but I could probably see myself doing something just like a one-off type thing with somebody. Would be fun to get in there and compete. It'd have to be the right price and the right person.
That's good though, man. I mean, yeah, that seems fair enough. Do you know what I mean? Especially now that you got your investments, you got your businesses. Do you know what I mean? That you're comfortable, and that's all you need. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So for people that don't know, like since you've been retired, like what have you been doing now? Like obviously you're talking about these businesses and stuff like that. So like what like really get into like the nitty gritty of like what different business you've got and like things like that.
All right. So the first one that I launched, right, it was actually right towards the end of my fight career, was Fins and Feathers. We spell fins and feathers with Z's. You guys can check it out, finsandfeathers.com. Basically what we do is we put together a full year-long schedule of different hunting, fishing trips all over the United States and all over the world. We go into Mexico for fishing. We go, out of San Diego for big tuna and all that fun stuff. And so basically we just book clients on each one of those trips. And then we have a bunch of different celebrity pro staff members, different UFC guys, pro ball players, actors, pro snowboarders, you name it, we got it. And they basically go on the trips with these clients. So say it's, you wanted to go do a mule deer hunt. You want to load your freezer with some like fresh wild venison. Now you get to go do a cool hunt, pack your freezer with some organic free range meat, but maybe go do it with like a guy like Uriah Faber or Dan Henderson with you in camp hunting with you. So, you get to shoot the shit with them in camp, if you want to have some beers with them or whatever, you go out hunt, build this camaraderie that you won't find that anywhere else. You can go to a meet and greet, shake a hand, take a picture, and it's like next guy, So this is a very unique opportunity for people to come, load up on some amazing food, have an unbelievable experience, and do it with one of these celebrities that you get to see on TV or playing a sport or whatever. So we launched that 2015, and we've been crushing it since. It's been freaking unbelievable getting to travel around and meeting all these different clients and different people who have tons of the same hobbies, things that they like to do in mind. So that's one. And then I just launched a new rub company, and we're working on a big cookbook that we signed a national publishing deal with Ben Bella Books. They did like Chrissy Teigen's book and a couple other big names. We've been working on that for about a year now, which is going to launch in November. Tons of like beef recipe, wild game stuff, all your domestic meats as well. So, you have all kinds of cool stuff in there. And then we also just launched the tin rub. So that's called The Provider. You can go to theproviderlife.com. And we have actually a huge giveaway going on right now for the month of April. If you buy one of the 10 packs, you get entered in. We're going to give away 2 packages where it's win a fishing trip with me, Clay Guida, and Chad Belding, the host of the Foul Life TV on the Outdoor Channel. And then you get a bunch of cool products like Traeger grills and Pelican coolers and all kinds of stuff, or a waterfowl hunting trip with Chad Belding for his show in Oklahoma with a bunch of cool gear, new shotgun and all kinds of hunting gear and stuff. So yeah, we're going to choose 2 winners right at the end of the month, and people are going to come hunting and fishing with us.
That's awesome. Tell you what, send me a link to that at the end, and I'll put it in the description of the video so people can come and find your stuff, if that's all right.
Yeah. And then we also launched the new beef company.
Oh shit, nice one.
Launched like a week ago. So I get to hunt after retiring. I get to hunt all over the world, which is pretty much, I don't want to call it a job, but it's something I love to do and get to do pretty much year round. So I always have wild game in my freezer. A lot of people, especially with the pandemic, when there was a bunch of meat shortage, people were freaking out. You know, I was giving away a bunch of my wild game to people that couldn't buy it at the store or didn't want to go to the store. So I think that kind of lit a fire into a lot of people's ass. And so for me, I wanted to do something and create something with some buddies that people could have confidence in, knowing that, okay, it's not wild game, but it's like the next best thing. So I can know that this has no antibiotics, no hormones in it. It's grass fed. And then the last 100 to 150 days, we feed them this like super high octane proprietary blend of feed that we've created. It has tons of California grown almonds. We basically just take the almonds, grind them up into like a mill. They got sunflower seed shells, prunes, beets. You got alfalfa, like barley hay, and then rice bran. So when you take brown rice and they want to turn it into white rice, they polish it, which takes all that healthy stuff, has the protein, the fats, all the vitamins, and we throw that in there too. So you got this super healthy diet that these animals are eating, and you know they're grass fed before. And basically just going right into our website, you can go on there direct to consumer. You can pick and choose whatever steaks you want, pay for it, and it gets shipped out and frozen on your doorstep.
Oh shit! So, do you guys do international shipping?
We're not quite there yet. We're still, I mean, this is a baby, like a baby company. So we're still doing stuff in the US, but we definitely could, I think. It's just shipping's probably going to be outrageous. So
I was going to say, yeah, to be fair, but I'm partial to a steak myself. So like that sounding juicy, not going to lie to you.
Oh, it's so good. It has like a buttery, nutty flavor from the feed, and it's super tender too. So it's good.
That sounds awesome, man. I'm glad to see you're doing well though. Like I'm glad to see that everything's kind of coming full circle, and you're really happy as well, because you always hear some kind of like horror stories about fighters. They retire and like, you know, they end up going down the wrong path, or they try and come back past their prime and stuff like that. But it seems like you've got your shit together, is what I'm trying to say. So like, what do you think of the current like lay of the land of the current featherweight division? Because if anyone's going to have a good opinion on this, it's you, right? Like you've kind of fought the who's who and has been around for like for a fair amount of time. Like, so obviously you've Volkanovski is still the champ, and you've got guys like Ortega, Holloway, and Zabit who are like looking to contend for that title. And then you've got like people like Dan Ige and then like Arnold Allen coming up in the rankings as well. So what's your kind of like understanding of like the lay of the land in that division right now?
You know, I think Zabit to me is one of those standout guys. Like he's huge for the weight. You know, he's super creative as far as his striking goes. I guess my only concern with that guy is I've seen him get kind of tired in those later rounds, and I'm guessing that's probably from so much weight cutting. If he gets that figured out, that's going to be a tough one. You know, I think Alex Volkanovski still could, you know, eke out a win on that guy, but I feel like that's going to be his toughest competition. So, you know, these other guys coming up, I mean, all these guys are tough. Everyone has strength, you know, everyone has something that's special to them and something that you'd have to train for and really focus on. And honestly, that's what makes it so interesting, I think, and what's so fun to watch that featherweight division, because there's so many guys that have different, like extremely different skill sets. You know, you got Ortega, who's his ground game is phenomenal, but now actually you got him figuring out the striking game too. He's getting way more technical. He's getting way more confident. You can see throwing these crazy spinning back elbows, and you know, you never used to see that, you know. And so you got guys like that who are also really big for the weight class. I guess before, when I was fighting, that was probably his weakest spot, was his striking, in my opinion. And now he's got the ground and size and striking. So I think that's another guy that's going to be right there as far as title contention goes.
So that's awesome, man. I mean, like, so my last question to you is like, how do you want to be remembered by the fans?
Oh man, that's a tough one, but you know, I always worked my ass off, man. That was something that from 5 years old, never took a year off all the way up through college, and jumped right into fighting. So, you know, it was 29 years of competition, straight competition. So, you know, it was a grind. My whole life was a grind, and it was basically me being built into those moments of the UFC title fights and fighting these guys who are now the champ or whatever that is. But, you know, it's, to me, I want to be remembered as someone that, you know, went from balls to wall from day one. You know, it's something that I absolutely love to do. Competition was something I craved. And, you know, I feel like I got my fill, and I'm completely content being retired now and starting different ventures in the outdoor world and just trying to build my brand outside. So I do appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the fan love. You know, we have a ton of people buying our beef and these rubs, and, you know, it definitely means a ton to me, going from being someone that was in the fighting athletic world my whole life to, you know, taking a risk and jumping into some of this other stuff. And I mean, it could just flop, you know, but because of the fans and because of people wanting to support, it's doing well. And that it truly does mean a lot to me.
Well, I was going to say, no, I don't think anyone in their right mind could say a bad word about you or criticize your career, because you had a very, really, really star-studded career and gave the fans some awesome fights. You know what I mean? And I'm a guy who respects any fighter that steps in there, because you're taking years and months off your life for like people's entertainment. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hate it when people kind of like badmouth fighters for whatever reason or another. Do you know what I mean? But especially for yourself, who gave people some insane fights that, you know, people will watch for generations to come. You know what I mean?
That's cool, man.
I can't see why anyone could ever say a bad word about your career, man.
We're always going to have the haters no matter what, but I think you're doing things right when you got the haters. So
I would say the haters are more like casuals, not going to lie.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, brother. Anyway, this was really nice to talk to you. If you've got some stuff to plug, feel free to do it now. Plug anything you want.
Yeah, man, I think just my businesses, you know, another thing I forgot to mention earlier is I'm working with a freeze-dried meal company, which doesn't really mean a lot to probably most people outside the hunting and fishing and hiking and outdoor world. But basically what it is I've created 3 of my own recipes in my kitchen. I sit there and I create these things, and we're basically turning them into freeze-dried meals. So they don't weigh anything. They pull all the moisture out of them. They'll last for years. You see a lot of these people that do like doomsday prepping, they load up on that type of stuff. But what we use it for in the outdoor world is put them in our backpacks. If I'm going to go hike in the backcountry of Alaska or whatever for 10 days, I need my food to not weigh very much. So, you know, basically it takes a cup of boiling water, which you boil some water, throw it in there, and it reconstitutes to a full meal. So I have one that's an elk meal, one that's a bison, and then we're about to launch one more July 1st, which I can't tell you what it is yet, but it's absolutely amazing. But yeah, we're going to run that again from July through September. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about, plug it. Peak Refuel is the name of the brand. Joe Rogan's actually talked about it a couple of times on his podcast, which is super cool. He uses them, loves them. So that's definitely something. But yeah, the provider, Fins and Feathers, Peak Refuel, and American Almond Beef are my company. So support them if you guys can. It means a lot to me. And this is what's putting food on my table nowadays. So thank you guys.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate this little interview that we've done. So, and I'm glad to see that you're happy and you're healthy and you're doing well.
Awesome, man. Send me the link or whatever, and I'll post it and get it out there too. So I appreciate it.
All right, Sam, man. I'll speak to you soon. Yeah.
Cool. Take care.
Take care. Bye.